If you remember, we talked earlier about the difference between building behavior and cueing behavior, the Zenith TV motto, christening newly built ships, and all that. We're now going to start attaching verbal cues to our nicely built positions. And how we do that is very specific vis-a-vis the order of events. First, we give the cue, pause a full second or two, and then signal the behavior as before. Not verbal and hand signal at the same time, and not signal first, verbal second. Let's start with sit. We'll do a bit of review with Lulu and then attach our verbal cue. We're now going to continue with Lulu on sit from stand, and we're going to add a verbal, but first I'm going to repeat our last step, which was a small hand signal, which she's already doing, and you can see that she's actually anticipating a little bit that the answer is going to be SIT. It's 2 for 2. Clever girl. 3 for 3. 4 for 4. Piece of cake. Here we go. Get her on her feet. She's ahead of the curve. There's a 5 for 5. So to add the verbal now, the order of events is extremely important. What I'm going to do is give the verbal cue, wait a full couple of beats before I even commence my signal. This is for a reason that I'm going to get into in a big way later on. For now, it's Nike time. We're just going to do it. So let's see what it looks like. Lulu. Sit. Good girl. Now that time she did what's called jumping the prompt. Sit. Oh, good girl. She's warmed up, and so I'm capitalizing on that. Had she not sat, and maybe she will again, sit. Good girl. I would have, after those 2 beats, I would have said sit, 1, 2, and then delivered my signal as usual, and then pay. So our criteria currently is that she goes on the signal. If she happens to go on the verbal, I'm taking that right now as a bonus. I'm doing what's called shopping. I'm shopping, sit, for response to the verbal. Now if she does something like this, I'm just going to wait, see if she gives me one. It's early, too early to be penalizing her, to be imposing a cost on her for making an error like that. Sit, and then the signal, and then I pay as usual. And I position feed a sit, sit, clever girl. And if she happens to jump the prompt, so her going on the verbal, her performing the behavior on the verbal before I've had a chance to deliver what currently is in the prompt slot. So technically this is a hand signal. It's not actually a prompt. I don't have food in my hand, but it's in the role of prompt. It is the stimulus to which she is likely to respond. And the new thing comes first. So what we do now is with your dog, if your dog is new to this behavior, your dog may very well take a while. And what will happen is you'll be doing kind of a holding pattern of stick sets where you'll say, sit, let me get her up, deliver your signal, and then pay. And what you'll be doing is you're just going to keep doing these stick sets where you do the verbal, wait a couple of beats, deliver the signal, and then you're going to keep track and see how often does the dog jump the prompt. You're going to pay every time on the signal, but you're going to count only the ones that the dog jumps the prompt and goes on the verbal. And when that seems to be at about, we're looking for a 60%. Okay, so we're looking for what would be a 3 for 5. Were I to push and require her to do it on the verbal, which looks like sit, clever girl. Okay, and if she hadn't gone on the verbal, so if she had lain down or she'd walked away or she took forever and she gave up, that would have been a dud trial. When I'm at a point with prompt jumping where I can anticipate that requiring it would give me a stick set, then it's safe to push. And this process of the dog going on the verbal without needing the signal varies greatly among dogs. Some dogs will do it pretty readily within a session or two, if it's new to them. Lulu she's previously been taught sit, so she's a little bit ahead. She's also extremely clever. Your dog may very well take multiple sessions. Not only does it vary among dogs, it also can vary by position. My little dog at home was completely national average for learning verbals, for learning sit from stand, and now we're going to be working with Lulu on down from sit. And let me show you what that looks like. Down. Oh, clever girl. Got lucky. Okay, she happened to jump the prompt there. Jump the prompt that time. So my little dog learned sit from stand and down from sit at completely national average rate. But when it came time for him to learn stand from sit, and stand from sit is not something we're including in this course because it has very low utility. It's not very useful. But I'm a dog trainer, and once I run out of things to train, I go grasping for extra things that may not be particularly useful, but just because I want to train it. And my little dog Brian took probably an order of magnitude more repetitions to learn stand from sit than most dogs. And that was just unique to that. And he was being taught that after having been taught other things on verbal. And so it can vary hugely. And all I did was I just repped it out. I just did as many reps as he needed. Okay, let's carry on with our down from sit. So I'm not going to worry too much about my sit. There we go. She's going to give me one. Down. Good. And I was about to commence my signal, and she had already gone. So I'm 2 for 2 on prompt jumping, at least in the ones that I've been keeping track of. Okay, let me get her up. You know what I can do is I can pre-train what I'm going to work on later, which is my sit from down. Sit. Clever girl. And I'm still going to pay that because that's still fledgling. Whoops. My rate of reinforcement's in the tank because I'm talking. Down. Good girl. Clever girl. So let me train properly here for you. Good girl. Whoops. Down. Good. I was going to give my signal, and she was already on the way. She's actually almost resetting herself. Clever girl. Reseat her so I can show you the sequence. Down. Good girl. And had she not gone, I would do my small signal. She's now, by my count, 3 for 3 or 4 for 4 on jumping the prompt. Your dog, again, don't gauge how your dog is doing based on Lulu. Once again, she's doing this extremely rapidly. She's very much a prodigy. Girl. Very nice. Down. Good girl. Very nice. Your dog, again, with their sit from a stand and their down from a sit, it might take multiple sessions where you're in this holding pattern of saying sit, signaling, paying, and then saying, boy, the dog hasn't, yet once jumped the prompt. They will. Especially if you're doing it properly with that full 2 beats in between. Beware of errors such as simultaneously delivering the verbal and signal or doing the reverse order, because that will definitely slow down your process. Okay, so now I'm going to be moving on to stationing. And where we left it was we were doing the tunnel where Lulu was electing to put her nose in. And if that goes well, I'm going to go ahead and add a verbal to that. So let's see if she remembers. Lo and behold, she does. Whoops. She gave me some paw. I don't care. The paw's incidental, so if they do something else while they're doing the thing you want, don't worry. Most of the time, those things will, good girl, will come out in the wash on their own. So don't agonize about it unless it becomes a pattern where it's actually, one, a problem. So it's actually going to interfere or confound what you're trying to teach. And 2, it's really annoying and it's not getting better on its own. For me, good. Getting stationing with some incidental pawing, I don't care. Very good. She's at 4 for 4. 5 for 5. I'll do a few more. Very good girl. And then when I see that she's doing it so readily, then it's actually safe to add a verbal, because what I want to avoid at all costs is delivering a verbal and then not being able to manufacture the behavior, because that's what we call a missed association. I've not pinned the word on the action that I want. Remember, cues don't drive behavior. It's reinforcement history that drives it. So we don't dare utter a cue unless we're pretty sure we can get the behavior. Very good girl. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dare to say, before I offer the prompt, station. Then she does it and I pay as usual. Okay. Station. Boom. In, pay. Station. Boom. In, pay it. Station. Clever girl. You're such a good girl. Yeah. Again, watch my order of events. Station stands on its own, then the prompt. I want the verbal to be attended to, and it's not going to be attended to if this is happening, because this is giving her all the information she needs. Station. What a clever girl. Oh, could you be better? Okay, and that's what that looks like. So we're going to move on now to a little tiny bit of duration and see if she can hold this. Because remember, this stationing behavior is not just something that she's doing. It's also something that can be, before it trained, a little bit loaded for dogs, because I'm actually putting my hand over her muzzle. So I'm going to be very careful and make sure she's happy with the duration. Station. 1001. Good girl. Very good. Okay. Station. Good girl, good girl. There we go. What I did that time was I bridged with the praise. So while she was in, before I delivered the food, as I was counting 1001, 1002 in my head, I was telling her she was going to say, it's coming, hang in there. Station. Good girl, yay. Oh, who's good? Very good girl. So that's good. That's very difficult. 2 seconds of station. So just wait. She's saying, I thought the answer's down. Very normal. Good girl, good girl. Normal mistake, but she's got infinity latency. I don't need her to do it within a certain amount of time. The offer remains open as long as she's working for me. If she were to tune out, then it would be a dud trial. And station. 1, 2. Who's a clever girl? That one was a bit fuzzy, so I'm going to call that a 4 for 5. That would still be a push. But she did really, really well. So with your dog, remember, always keep an eye on when you're working on stationing, not just are they doing the behavior, but are they kind of doing it happily, or are they just barely hanging in there? And one of your friends will be doing sets of 10. I just did on my last one a set of 5, but you can go ahead and do a set of 10 for this and bridge with praise while the dog is in there. And if you don't, if you get a 2 for 5, don't be afraid to drop back to the previous step. That's very normal in training. You're not seeing tons of dropping with Lulu, but once again, we just got totally lucky with this dog. She just is a real problem solver and puzzle solver type of dog. She's learning very, very quickly. So I'm warming up Lulu with our previous watch exercise, which is the Premack. Good girl. And all she's required to do is 1 second of watching, even though the food is to the side. So she needs to make eye contact for just 1 second in spite of the food on the side. I don't care what position she's in as long as she's making eye contact. And she's just aced her warm-up. And so now we're going to make it a little bit more difficult. Here is Michelle. And Michelle is going to first distract Lulu just by talking to her. And we're going to see if that is something that Lulu can handle. So I'm going to ask for watch, and then Michelle will talk to her.
Lulu. Hi,
And once
Lulu.
she, good girl. And once she looks back at me in spite of the talking, she wins.
Lulu. Hi, Lulu.
Good girl. So what she's learning is that when I'm pointing at my eyes, and later on there will be a verbal cue, that means that no matter what is going on around you, the right answer is to look up here, which is very counterintuitive, but that's what training is for a lot of dogs.
Lulu.
Good girl. And don't worry, occasionally you'll get a superstition where they go, do I have to do that? Don't worry about that. That'll come out in the wash. Good girl. That time she did a flinch, which means she did a very minor perfunctory checking of Michelle. Good girl. And then she looked back. So that was actually quite good. We're actually going to push on that because the latency was so good. And we're going to push to a squeaky toy. So now I'm going to ask Lulu to watch. Michelle's going to squeak the toy, and then I'm going to pay if she reacquires me. Clever girl. Clever girl. Good girl. The clever girl. That time I had a 0 flinch, so she didn't even give it an acknowledgement, which we love. Clever girl. Partly this is that she's warmed up. So when Michelle spoke, that didn't work to look at Michelle. Now Michelle is squeaking the toy. That's also not working. Clever girl. So 4 for 4. And one more time. Clever girl. Now because she did so well on that, 5 for 5, we're going to make it a little bit harder. And we're going to actually have now Michelle, in theory, offer food. But here's the thing, it's going to be an illusion. Michelle will offer it, but if Lulu goes to take it, Michelle will close her hand. That's going to be an illusion, this food. The only real stuff comes from me, and it only happens if she watches. Make sure that she knows. Lulu, look. Ooh. This is one smart dog. What you normally have in this exercise is the dog will several times, aha, there we go. So I'm just going to wait. And this is a puzzle. At some point, this is very good girl. Oh, she glanced at me, and it was sheer accident. It's like, what am I supposed to do to get the food over there? So here I am. So I'm just going to gather dust. That's just never going to work. Part of training is not just the dog learning what works. Oh, good girl. It's learning what never works. And in the context of her having to WATCH, what never works is going for what seems to be a really sort of clear, that's an obvious thing to do. How can that possibly work? But we're actually going to carve a new idea into her head, which is that bugging Michelle doesn't work. Good girl. Barking doesn't work. Attending to me does. And you can end up with, at the culmination of this kind of training, you can end up with a dog who they see a distraction and they just snap towards their handler. And that's a nice thing to have. And I don't worry that she's not looking at my signal. Dogs have very good girl, peripheral vision. Very nice. Her latency was a little bit better now, but I don't care. We're just going to carry on until I have quick latency. Good girl, yes. I'm confess that I'm actually kind of glad that for once Lulu is looking like a normal dog. Normally she learns things so quickly that I worry about, good girl, unfavorable comparisons with people who are viewing this. And in fact, this is what these kinds of exercises, all the pre-MEC exercises, normally look like, which is initially, it's very much a puzzle. Good girl. That time, she was a little quicker and there was no conflict barking, there was no frustration. She was, doesn't mean she's going to get the next rep. Watch, she could definitely. Good girl. Who's a clever girl? Notice also that I'm position feeding to bias her a little bit, and this is something that's going to come up later on when we talk about Leave It, is the way I feed and the place that I feed can actually get the dog to anticipate things are going to happen in a certain way. Okay, let's do a couple more. Clever girl. So I'm biasing her away from Michelle and towards me with that little step backwards. That prompts can't resist. Good girl. She couldn't help herself. She couldn't resist the food, but then she said, I know what works here. She's starting to learn. Good girl. This is a behavior, what we're seeing here, this sort of normal trajectory, is something that's going to roll forward very nicely. And what that means is that when Lulu has had a chance to sleep, were we to come back to this, you're going to see usually, especially if there's like a week or so, for her to process all this data, because this is all very, very weird data for a dog. Once she has a chance to process this, you're going to see sort of an uptick in performance as though she were practicing in her sleep. And the best research we have is that literally that's what's happening, is that animals and us, we actually rehearse this stuff when we're sleeping. Okay, we're going to do one final rep for good luck. Clever girl. One last payment for position, and then we're going to move on. Thank you very much, Michelle, for your help. Now we're going to work on our sit from down, and where we left it was with a broad signal. So I was giving her a full hand signal, not with a food lure, but a very literal signal, which was I'm allowed to bend at the waist. If you have to, you can go right to the dog's nose and go upwards. Let me show you. So it would be perfectly legal to do something like that. There we go. And at the same time, we can practice our down from stand. See how my broad signal is looking? Good, very good girl. Clever girl. Good girl. The 2 for 2 on broad. I got a dud on my down. That's okay. Oh boy, man, what a clever dog. She's just self-reinforced. There we go. 3 for 3. Get my down while I'm reloading. That's tricky. The fact that I'm crinkling as I'm offering a cue is a classic example of doing a cue and something that is salient simultaneously and the dog missing the cue entirely. And we'll be talking about that later in respondent conditioning. Good girl. There's my down. We're on a 3 for 3 if memory serves. There we go. 4 for 4. That little pause is her cost for wrong response. Little mini rate crack. Good girl. Okay, so that was 4 for 4. I'm going to try now a small signal. Get my down. Waiting for it. Clever girl. Ooh, who's clever? So for the small signal, it's very much like the one that's from a stand, but from a down, it's going to look a little bit differently to the dog. And again, it's a different motor pattern. But I got lucky. I got a 1 for 1. Go ahead and reload. My down. Pay my down with a small signal. Oh, good girl. 2 for 2. Getting some stuttering. I'm getting a little bit of she pops. Once I've paid the sit from down, she pops, and then I have a hard time getting my setup behavior back, but that's okay. I'm just gonna do what I have to get her into the down, which is my setup for sit. There we go. Yeah, as you see, she's already starting to anticipate. I'm just going to give her a little bit of a cost here because she missed that cue. Okay. Clever girl. Small signal. She's actually catching it right out of the corner of her eye and she's going very quickly. Here we go. Good girl. Good girl. It's a 5 for 5. Because that's looking so solid now, I'm going to quickly get her back down. I'm going to go ahead and attach my verbal, and it's going to be the same verbal, which is SIT, as it would be from a stand, even though it's a different motor pattern. Dogs dope that out very easily, that even though they're doing something different, both of those things have the same name. There we go. Usual pattern, verbal, sit. Oh, well, well, look at you, fancy girl. There's my little, there we go. It's always this one. There we go. Sit. Good girl. Who's good? Give her a little bonus in the paycheck there because normally that's when she pops into a stand. Sit. Good girl. She jumped the prompt. That's formidable. Normally, this sit from a down for a small signal, and the verbal normally takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions. I know, it's a terrible thing. As is the case with many clever dogs, because I'm, whoops, sit, boom, okay. Because I'm talking to you, it's messing up my game a little bit, and she's saying, come on, you know, let's solve this puzzle faster. Give me the next rep. It's the hallmark of the clever. Okay. There we go. Sit. Good girl. That's the sequence. Down. Boom. Good. I'll go ahead and one for the house. Sit. Good girl. Good prompt jump that time. Down. Whoops. Oh, that's a bummer. It's terrible when you stand. Wrong hatch. Sit. Clever girl. Down. Oh, that never helps us. Try again. Sit. Good girl. Down. Oh, I can't help you. Try again. So you commiserate. When they make a mistake, it's not, you're bad, you're terrible. It's just, oh, you wrecked it for yourself. Okay, Lulu doesn't make a lot of mistakes, so I haven't had incredible opportunity, good, down, to show you that commiseration process. We'll do one more and then we're going to move on. Sit. Good girl. And that was a prompt jump. So my anticipation is that she's probably going to nail her verbals. Okay, so my final behavior is down from a stand. And I'm going to warm her up with the full lure, and then I'm going to do my usual process of fading to a signal. So again, straight down, from a stand position, straight down. Lulu is a front end first dog, if you remember, and that's fine. It's okay if your dog is back end first, unless you're going to do competitive obedience. Straight down. They've got as long as they need to do it. Once the elbows and the rear quarters are on the ground, you just open your hand, position feed. Choose 2 for 2. Wait, waiting for the rear, boom. Hand opens. Let me do it to the side so you can see my hand a little bit better. Okay. Whoops, she's in a sit. Don't want that. I want from a stand. Boom, boom. Hand opens as soon as those, the more cause and effect you can be with rewards and punishments in dog training, the faster dogs learn. Waiting, front end, back end, hand opens. That's a 5 for 5, I think. So now what I'm going to do is the same thing, but empty-handed. Okay, nothing in my hand, straight to the floor, front end, back end, pay from my other hand. 1 for 1. Straight down to the floor. Good girl. Actually had faster latency there, which is unusual. Usually when you switch to empty hand, the latency gets a little slower. Waiting. That's a more usual response, what she's doing there, which is, I have no idea. I've never seen that in my life. And she's still sort of working, so I haven't given up. Boom, there we go. Pay. There we go. Get her on her feet, straight to the floor. I've never seen that in my life. Too bad. Okay, so because of the barking, I'm going to go ahead and cancel that one. So that's a stick. So what I would do is then perform one more set at that level. And let me see if she's game. She is. Okay. I'll make sure she's not out of gas. You always want to make sure that your dog is still motivated. She does still seem to be having plenty of gas in the tank. So I'm going to go ahead with my final set. See if I can get a push to a small signal. Good girl. Don't worry about stuff like that. Yay. Girl. Up, up. So I'm going to try and just encourage her up. Here we go. But all the payment is for, I really need that pattern from a stand position going to a down. Good girl. Very good girl. All the way to the floor. Clever girl. Okay. And my push is to a small hand signal. And that looks like this. Halfway. So she's in a sit. I need her in a stand. To my knees. And then I wait. Good girl. She was a little bit back end first, but I don't care. That's fine. Okay. Clever girl. And the fact that she's moving a bit is fine, because eventually my actual end goal for this is that she do a down in motion, okay? Because that's the utility of this. So the fact that she's moving a little bit is actually kind of a preview of coming attractions. The final thing I want to show you is a toggle. And a toggle is that dogs have biases and they have preferred behaviors. We have to constantly push back against this. And we're going to start right now by mixing up the sit from stand, the verbal followed by a small signal, with the down from stand in the same manner. Later we're going to practice the actual discrimination, which is where the fun really starts. But let me show you what this looks like. Sit, clever girl. She didn't need the signal. And now I'm going to mix it up. And this is her current level. Ooh, good. So she's now in a standing position. And rather than do always the answer is sit, always the answer is sit, always the answer is sit, always the answer is down. Now I'm going to mix it up. Be careful to not do a pattern such as one sit, one down, because dogs will actually learn that. So we're going to mix up whatever is your dog's current level from a stand position of sit. Do some reps of that, and whatever is your dog's current level of down from a stand, mix that up. And we call that toggling, which gives the dog a choice. So they have to start attending more to our prompts and to our verbal cues. We've laid an excellent foundation, starting the cue association process with positions, including toggling a little bit back and forth. This plants the seed in the dog's mind that the content of our verbiage has key information on what she can do to win. We've also started some heavier distraction proofing. Practice a bit once or twice a week if you can manage it. Don't forget to put verbal cues a clear couple of seconds before hand signals. We'll be back to training again later. For now, we're going to pivot away from training and spend some time getting to know the pre-installed behavior software suite that comes bundled with your dog.